what really, really got me, we were coming off of Guitar Hero World, who can play faster,
totally.
lightning speed, and then all of a sudden it's like, reverse. Hey, if you're a fan of Alice in Chains, this video is for you. So what I wanted to do today, Gary, is I want to talk about this album, but not go into all the tracks, but talk a little bit more about the context. Because part of what fascinates me about this album is the time that it came out.
Yeah.
The change that was going on. Let me take the plastic off so we can see it a little more clearly. It was, when this album came out, it was right as everything in the world of music and entertainment was about to change. But one of the things, and I think I mentioned this before in another video, that we sometimes forget is how early this came out in relation to Nirvana.
Right, because everybody talks about Smells Like Teen Spirit kind of was the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
That's the pivotal moment, right? And I think on a more broad scale, that is correct. That changed everything. Yet, this album was out a year prior, actually a little more than a year prior, which I think was the predecessor, right, to all of this and just the whole Seattle sound, right?
Yeah. And so there's a couple things I wanted to share with you here. First of all, I found an article, which we'll get to in a minute, where it actually, this person kind of talks about this record in the context of what was going on before everything changed. And then, but I wanted to go through something else that I think that actually tells the story even more. And it is all these different things that came out around this same year when this came out.
When Alice in Chains Facelift, which is their major label debut, right?
Yeah.
What came out during, what was coming out at the same time?
The other things that were happening.
Yeah, so what else was?
Because this album was so amazing. I remember buying this thing. I listened to this over and over and over and over. With some of the greatest guitar tones ever recorded. There's so much great stuff on here. But again, it was such a shift in sound, and then when you put it in the context of all the other stuff that was going on, that's what I wanted to talk about here.
No, without a doubt.
So it actually came out on August 28th of 1990, and to your point, that's basically a little over a year prior to Nevermind coming out. Okay, so here are the other things that are coming out in 1990. John Bon Jovi's solo album, Blaze of Glory, August 7th of 1990.
I'm going down.
Yeah. Solo album. I mean, imagine this. August 7th of 1990. That comes out 2 weeks before this.
Yeah, all right. I mean, can you be bigger than Bon Jovi at that point?
Okay, Heartbreak Station. This is Cinderella's third album.
Yep.
Actually, that's the first one that Fred Curry actually played on, by the way. I don't know how many people know that, but and that came out in November of 1990, so it was a little bit after this. Damn Yankees, March 13th of 1990. Which is
kind of like, I mean, that's Jack Blades. It's a super group.
Ted
Jack
Nugent,
Blade, Ted
Tommy
Nugent,
Shaw.
Tommy Shaw, and
I don't know who the drummer was, but it was a super group.
Yeah.
They played on Letterman.
Yeah,
they had big tunes. They were very, very popular. Okay, Electric Boys. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
I only bring them up because I happen to love the Lips and Hips song.
Yeah, Lips and Hips. But that's also, I mean, that's kind of, that's a whole thing. Lips and Hips is a great song.
Great song, man.
Yeah.
Great song. I fell in love with them.
That intro is fantastic.
I bought that CD also, and I don't know, the rest of it was meh. But that song was crazy. Yeah, the intro, he has a sitar, so great.
Yep.
Okay, Extreme Pornograffiti, August 7th of 1990.
Wow.
2 weeks before this.
Very, very
Okay,
different.
what was on that album? Get the Funk Out.
Yep.
And
More Than
Words. 2 weeks before this. Okay, check this one out. Firehouse.
Ooh.
September 11th of 1990. Basically, like just right after this comes out.
Small Firehouse
Don't
fact.
Treat Me Bad.
Yeah. A Firehouse actually filmed one of their videos. It's not Don't Treat Me Bad, but a different one. A guy at my work here in town was saying, oh yeah, me and a bunch of people, they like put a shout out to everybody in high school or whatever to go out to Springdale. They have like a little outside concert venue or whatever out there. That's in. If you ever gone to Zion National Park, it's like
Yeah.
right there. And I guess they had
No kidding.
It's like the video where they're coming out for the helicopter.
I don't even remember that.
It was here.
Okay, I got to go watch that.
Yeah,
now.
it's pretty cool. We'll add the link or
But
do something.
Firehouse, man.
Yeah, but
I mean,
totally,
again,
style wise, totally different.
Okay, now here's another one though that came out 7 days, a week before Jane's Addiction, Ritual de lo Habitual.
Whoa,
That was
very different.
Yeah,
Great
and
album.
That was it.
Very
Was
different.
and that was had the song "Stop," "Been Caught Stealing."
Yep.
And that was a kind of a pivotal
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So there was another. So that album, that band was coming in. Okay, Judas Priest had "Painkiller," September 7th of 1990. Okay, here's one for you.
Okay.
King's X, "Faith, Hope, Love,"
Yeah.
October 23rd, 1990.
Good album.
Okay, Lynch Mob, "Wicked Sensation," October 23rd, 2 months after this.
And I know we just did the doc and video, but Lynch Mob, Wicked Sensation is fantastic.
That tune-
but totally different than this.
Yeah. No, because so many of these things, this is the point. So many of these things we're reading off are basically leftover sound and attitude from the 80s.
Right. Yeah. No.
That's why this is so interesting to me. But some of them aren't. I mean, some of them are genuinely different, but you can feel what was going on at the time. Okay, Megadeth had "Rust in Peace," September 24th of 1990.
Okay.
Pantera, "Cowboys from Hell," July 24th of 1990, so it was just before this.
I mean, those are both darker, so that's actually pretty cool.
And they were bands, kind of like Metallica, that survived.
You're right.
They survived this thing that happened, and they partly because they were
The
their
newer
own,
sound,
They
yeah.
had something in them.
You're
That
talking
attitude.
about Megadeth and Pantera alone had their own darker, heavier sound,
Yeah.
more in line with this than the other stuff
Right.
that you've lined up. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Next.
Poison, Flesh and Blood, July 2nd, 1990. Dude,
Which-
if anything tells the story of the 1980s, it's Unskinny Bop.
Right.
I mean, everything about that song. The only thing that doesn't tell the story is that they didn't misspell unskinny or bop. That would have totally done it
Yeah.
if they would have added a different letter that's not, or put
I mean,
the little dots over the
That
bop.
was right there. That was definitely full on rock mainstream.
Now today, I look back and I love that tune. But then when this stuff came out, all of a sudden that was one of those, and I'm like, dude, wait a minute. It started like anyway. I had that shift. I know not everybody did, but I did.
love C.C. DeVille as a
Yeah.
guitar player and some of the riffs and some of the stuff that he's doing, and I like Poison as a kind of whole. But it does now looking back, it is like, and I don't know why, but I feel like it's super polished. If I had a choice between putting on Flesh and Blood or Facelift, it's Facelift.
Yeah.
Almost 9 out of 10 times, for sure.
Oh yeah,
Because
for
it's
sure.
just, I don't know, maybe I'm just darker.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But that being said, all these years later, I actually Unskinny Bop. I love that tune.
Yeah.
It's super fun. It's kind of crazy, but it represented that
Yeah,
time.
that timestamp. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Hey, here's another one. This one's great. Queensrÿche, Empire, September 4th, 1990. That
That's a
came
great
out
album.
just after this.
And that stands on its own too. I mean, because it's so good.
And interestingly, they were a Seattle band.
That is true. That's a Seattle tie-in.
Yeah.
Doing their own thing.
That album,
I think that's what makes that whole sound and that whole scene. I mean, think about
check it out. I think you're right about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but because that album played itself out over the next year. You know what I mean?
Silent Lucidity's on there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Jet City Woman, they had so many hits off that song. The song Empire.
Right.
I mean, it was such a great album. We saw that concert together, didn't we? Go see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they were great. I loved Queensrÿche, but they as soon as that tour was over and those songs kind of started fading, what happened to Queensrÿche?
Yeah, it
like
just wasn't
no
the
more.
same.
I mean, the Promised Land, I think, was the next one,
out.
and I saw
seen
them on that
Yeah,
tour.
Me too.
But man, it was half. They were
Yeah, it was
it was
different.
half size.
Because, like we're saying, that a pivotal time. Like you can either, it was just a pivotal time because the music landscape was changing.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, Scorpions' Crazy World.
Okay.
That was November of 1990.
They were already kind of on the downward slide.
They for sure. That was the one that had Tease Me, Please Me, and Winds of Change, which became a big song.
Yes.
So, okay.
Again, on the softer side.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Then another one, which you will love, which we were just talking about moments ago. Okay. Stick It To Ya. Slaughter.
Ooh, Slaughter.
Was earlier in the year, January. So they were early in the year, January 23rd of 1990.
You know who didn't put out an album in 1990?
Who?
Vinnie Vincent. Just saying.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
No,
he's
Vinnie
probably,
Vincent.
But Stick It To Ya is a great album, and it's also carrying on. If you listen to All Systems Go, it's the next progression minus Vinnie. And it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I did a record opening a few days ago where I pulled that one out, and I talked about you
awesome.
in it because it is an album you like. And I've been listening to it a lot lately just because I want to be able to speak intelligently about it. There's some good stuff on it. The production's amazing, by the way. It's a great production on that album.
No solos in here, pal. Doesn't Mark say that in one of the songs?
Oh, you know what? It's a second song where he does that David Lee Roth like rap.
Yeah.
I got to go listen to that again. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, so
kind of
but Slaughter was kind of one of those. They did a little bit of that
but
leftover.
They were huge, yeah.
But they were huge. They were huge. Slayer, Seasons in the Abyss, another band that managed to survive.
More in this vein.
Okay, you're gonna love this one. Steelheart.
Oh my gosh.
That year. Remember the song "I'll Never Let You Go"? Okay, that was 1990.
Oh man.
Tesla did 5-man acoustical jam.
Okay.
Which because it wasn't the normal kind of heavy metal stuff, they were doing that old Signs song. Somehow it didn't seem to conflict with what was going on.
Again,
it felt
it
more
stands on
natural,
its own because
weirdly.
it's its own thing.
Yeah, because it was its own thing. Then here's the one that I mentioned before we started that I thought was so important to note. Trickster came out with their first album this year. And you remember the song One in a Million and Give It To Me Good? Remember that song, Give It To Me Good? Dude, again, a little bit like Unskinny Bop. It is just total like 1980, and it's a catchy tune.
Yeah. It definitely it's that 80s carryover, right?
But it's that leftover 80s stuff that was just about to get crushed like a steamroller.
Yes.
By a sound that sounded like a steamroller.
It just goes along with, hey, we've had enough of that regurgitated sound, style, lyrics, imagery, and it's like, boop, right at this time.
Yeah.
It's like right there to change.
If they'd have showed up 2 years earlier, they probably would have had a career. But it was just too late. They came in, they had some fun tunes, and then all these bands, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, they all just came in and go just crushed it all. Crushed everybody's dreams. Right? Okay, couple more.
Yeah. This is actually pretty fun.
Warrant, Cherry Pie. Came out September 11th of 1990, right after this. And of course that had Cherry Pie.
Poppy song.
Dude, it's so funny. Cherry Pie was totally poppy. But you know what? I loved those other two hits that were on the album, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Oh, that's a great song.
It was a great tune.
Great song.
And you know what other song I loved? I Saw Red.
That is a good song.
I actually...
I thought you were going to say Heaven.
No.
I know that's on the,
I was going to say that's
album
on
previously, but...
I Saw Red. I loved that song so much. I was one of the bands I was playing with. We got asked to go play a prom, and we didn't have any slow tunes. And I was like, you know what? I'll play I Saw Red.
Oh, jeez.
And I did. And it was probably super lame. But we got paid. And but I loved that tune. That was a great song. Okay, last one. Winger.
Ooh.
In the Heart of the Young, July 24th of 1990. And that album sold. Like, it did pretty well.
It did good, but I want to say it's actually kind of funny because, Winger was kind of one of these bands. Remember, we talked about them in the Alice Cooper video that,
Kip Winger.
Kip Winger was in the Alice Cooper band. And then, they got totally, like, rocked in not a good way, on Beavis and Butthead. Remember, they'd always bash. They'd always bash on Winger.
Is that, I don't remember, but
And they were like,
that sounds familiar.
you know, Metallica, White Zombie.
They loved White Zombie.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, talk about a paradigm shift, right? That's what we're talking about here. Is this timestamp? Winger is like just about, and then you have Beavis and Butthead. You have this new sound with this. I mean, talk about White Zombie being a totally, again, a band that's going to cross into the next decade, carrying a lot of momentum. But who's sticking around? You mentioned Slayer, Megadeth,
Metallica stuck around.
Metallica. You know, this heavier sound that I think people were like, "This is cooler," and you know, that soft poppy stuff was. It was on the verge of being out.
Yeah,
and so Winger was writing great songs, just softer.
Yeah. So listen to this. So I thought this was so interesting, and this is where I wanted to take all this. And it's this short article that I actually think you're really going to like this, because it takes that everything we just talked about, and this was written on September 28th of 1990 in the Record Journal in, where is this? This is in Meridian, Connecticut, wherever. But I loved this. Just listen to a couple of things this person has to say. I thought this was so cool because
this album's been out a month or so.
Because it's been out about a month, and there were people, I wasn't really yet, but there were people starting to feel it. They'd actually been feeling it for a little while when Soundgarden was starting to move, and I didn't know. I was unaware of Soundgarden until Bad Motorfinger. I was totally oblivious when Louder Than Love came out, even though people were starting to talk about it.
I had somebody recommend Louder Than Love, right?
Today it's one of my favorite albums. Yeah. But back then I
remember listening it to the first time. I'm like, this is so different. And just, you know, Chris Cornell and just the sounds and just how they play it. I'm like, whoa. It took me time to really kind of, because again, as a fan, you know, growing up on simpler stuff and listening to what was on the radio at the time, and then you throw that in, you know, I was like, it took time for me to really digest and really appreciate what I was listening to. It was such a shift.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think for a lot of us, once we got it.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I get it.
I mean, Bad Motorfinger.
Yeah, you just listen to it and you go, okay, this is one of the greatest things ever recorded, ever written. It's amazing. Okay.
Chris Cornell.
So check this out.
Rest in peace, man. You're amazing.
He became
and
like
by the
hero.
way, congratulations. They just got inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I saw something about that. We need to talk about them more.
Yes.
I've got vinyl that I bought when it came out on vinyl because I loved. Yes. I've seen him in concert a bunch of times. I loved Soundgarden. Okay, this is called Alice in Chains Has Plodding Powerful Sound. That's the title. Okay, check this out. What is it about Seattle that has made it such a breeding ground of late for dark, eclectic, and grungy heavy rock sounds? Over the past 3 years, this is why this was so interesting to me. Because this person is painfully aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and the term grunge was not yet.
Grungy heavy rock bands.
Yeah, it was not yet in our vocabulary.
Kind of the common vernacular.
Yeah.
It hadn't really entered so much here. So over the past 3 years, the cloud-shrouded city in the shadow of Mount Rainier has spawned a host of brooding and bombastic acts. Grammy nominees Soundgarden, the tragically short-lived Mother Love Bone, psychedelic distortion lovers Mudhoney, and the lesser-known Nirvana. Tad, Screaming Trees, and Fluid. Why there and why now? Impressive. Layne Staley, what's that?
Yeah, I mean, he's already, I'm impressed that he's even like laying that out there.
Yeah, exactly. This is why, like I said, I saw this and I was like, this is so cool. Layne Staley, singer with Seattle's latest musical offering, Alice in Chains, has his own theory on the matter. Quote, I think that all of the sludge on the bottom of the Puget Sound is finally rising to the surface, unquote. He chuckles over the phone last week from a noisy dressing room of a Milwaukee club whose name escapes him. Sludge is actually a pretty fitting, but by no means derogatory description of the music Alice in Chains and the rest of Seattle contingent has been churning out. It's heavy, gloomy, and it doesn't move very fast. By the way, this whole album, I mean, there's a couple of faster tunes, but man, it is a lot of gung, 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 boom. And that's the way Soundgarden was. So much of their
great.
stuff was just this pounding.
They're powerful.
Just, yes, okay. Loud, aggressive rock and roll on Thorazine.
Yeah, and I'm going to say moody, too. I mean, that's the whole... Yeah, it's a moody album.
Yeah. It's representative of the Overcast in some ways.
Right? I mean, didn't they used to say that about Black Sabbath coming out of,
That's right.
The steel industrial part of England, and that's why we sound the way we do.
Check it out. Here he goes. Quote, I think the weather has something to do with it, unquote. Staley notes in a more serious tone. As I'm sure you know, it's gray and cloudy in Seattle most of the time, and it can put you in a gray, cloudy kind of mood. That seems to be when we, and I guess a lot of other bands, do most of our writing, unquote. The dreary weather, he adds, is also a likely factor in the area's large crop of bands. Quote, there's really not much for kids to do but stay inside, pick up a guitar, and play music, Staley explains. It's a good way to combat boredom and burn off aggression, and it seems like more people are doing that around Seattle nowadays, unquote. From the remnants of a host of garage bands, 4 bored and aggressive young musicians, Staley, guitarist Jerry Cantrell, bassist Michael Starr, and drummer Sean Kinney, came together almost 3 years ago to form Alice in Chains. And by the way...
Mike Starr's on the cover.
This is Mike Starr on the cover. The quartet soon moved into a rehearsal hall, named themselves after a pet goat that was kept chained in the yard there, and went to work developing a plodding but powerful sound that made up in intensity what it lacked in velocity. 2 years of practice, the usual club gigs, mini tours, and demo work paid off for Alice in Chains as the band inked a deal late last year with Columbia Records, who snatched them from the clutches of Island Records.
Interesting.
The band's debut album, Facelift, produced by Dave Jordan, whose credits include Jane's Addiction, Social Distortion, Rolling Stones, was released 2 months ago. By the way, Social Distortion, Jane's Addiction, not surprised to be in that same, and even the Stones to some degree, but in that same company.
Yeah.
Keeping true to their Seattle roots and influences, Alice in Chains fashioned a brash, grinding, power-packed record with Facelift, a collection of gloom-laden, off-center songs with cheery titles like We Die Young, Sea of Sorrow, Bleed the Freak, I love that song, Put You Down, and Love, Hate, Love. It's a jolting, lurching album that smacks of Black Sabbath on some wild acid trip.
Yeah, it's true.
This person,
he
again,
gets it.
I love this because this is September of 1990.
Right.
This is a month after this. This is when Trickster is hot. I mean, this is why I wanted to talk about this.
No,
because it was such a moment, and this person kind of got it.
He's definitely on point, if not ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Just kind of seeing it and understanding what is happening right now.
Without a doubt.
Quote, there's a lot of weird, quaalude, doomy stuff on the album, Staley admits, but it's all about real life, and a lot of the time, real life isn't as fun or as normal as maybe people would like. The real world can be bleak and twisted, and I think we've captured that essence with both our music and words on the album. We're really happy with it, even though it's not a very happy record, unquote. Alice in Chains is currently out on the road. Now, this is, dude... This next part ties all this together, okay? Because when you hear this, you'll remember what was going on at that moment. Dude, this is so, I love this right here. Alice in Chains is currently out on the road building support for the album as the opening act for Boston's high-energy funk metal Knuckleheads Extreme.
Oh, they're opening for Extreme. I thought they were opening for Boston, sorry.
They're opening for Extreme.
That's crazy,
dude.
So they couldn't be any more dichotomous.
That's right. So listen to this now.
You're getting an opening act with this amount of power. Like if you watch the movie Singles, Alice in Chains is in the background on the club scene, and they are fantastic. No knock on Extreme, but it's the totally different energy.
But the reason this hits me so hard is that somehow we all understood that they were kind of from the same world.
Right.
And one was about to get knocked out because they put them together.
Well,
because it's like hard rock touring together, and there was something in the ether that made us realize that why. Because this didn't replace country music. This replaced a very specific thing, and Extreme was one of them. And
well, it was I think it's the catalyst of change. I mean, it didn't replace it because other bands still put out, the Tricksters of the world still put out stuff. It just didn't sell.
It just when I say replace, it was like they're still there.
I mean,
but nobody was watching them.
There was an interview with Winger's Reb Beach or something. He's like, look, we were doing fine. And then all of a sudden, like, this all came out and the radio waves were just like all on that. You know, because think about it. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden just dominated, right? They couldn't even, I mean, they're selling out arenas and I think Reb Beach said, dude, we had to like cancel shows.
Yeah.
Cancel tours because we had like a handful of people in there and going, why are we wasting our time? And they didn't do anything different. They're like, we put out some of our best stuff. And this is what happens. It's just the shift.
It's fascinating.
Was that dramatic?
It's
obviously we're looking back on it, but this guy's on there.
Yeah.
I mean, so they're opening for Extreme.
They're opening for Extreme. Okay. The tour, which began a month ago, will continue for another 6 weeks. Bringing the drastically contrasting acts to Toad's Place in New Haven Tuesday night. Quote, it's a pretty odd pairing, Staley confesses. We're like total opposites. They're a light, fun, almost goofy kind of band, and we're real slow and serious, but it seems to be working. It's their crowd that we're playing for, and they seem to dig us, which is cool. Again, this is why I think this is so fascinating.
Toad's Place in New Haven, by the way, is...
You know what that is?
It's a club. Yeah, it was actually a pretty big club. I want to say a lot of people would play there kind of as like a warm-up to like a bigger tour. And I want to say like the Stones did like... It was. Can you imagine seeing the Rolling Stones in a club as a warm-up?
That's
like,
amazing. That is kind of interesting.
I mean, New Haven is where Yale, University is. So it's just kind of it's kind of a cool place. But people from the city or Long Island would go up to Connecticut because sometimes they'd have like this obscure type stuff playing. So good for them.
Opening up for Extreme at...
Yeah.
Okay. So listen to what he says. We're still trying to find our niche musically. So all we want to do with this album and tour is get people to accept us so we have something to build on later. Talk about not really appreciating what they had.
Yeah.
Because he didn't.
Didn't even know.
Because a year later, it wouldn't be long before...
I want to say...
Man in the Box was being played constantly.
All the time on MTV. That's what I was going to say. Between Man in the Box, this gaining momentum, the paradigm shift, I want to say this is like the first like certified gold album of that kind of genre. Because this was
that
like
may be
leading the way.
Yeah. The album, let's see, quote, the album turned out to be sort of an experiment for us, he continues, because they were old songs we decided to do in a new way when we recorded them, which is where the title Facelift came. But it shows where we're headed, and if we can get some people to come along for the ride with us, then great, welcome aboard, unquote.
Unbelievable. So he doesn't even know.
He doesn't understand what they have.
Yeah.
From early indications, the future promises a pretty wild ride. Staley says new material the band has put together, quote, is a lot more messed up, unquote, than Facelift's already bizarre content. Quote, it's really different, he explains. I don't know how to describe it except that it's heavier and more twisted. I mean, really strange. It even freaks us out, and that's saying something.
Well, I mean, that you must be talking about the songs they're working on for Dirt, right? Like
yeah,
Wood.
or they had the one,
that
EP that I loved that had some pretty crazy stuff on it. Matter of fact, they had Ann Wilson, wasn't she on one of those tunes?
Yes.
It's been so long since I listened to that.
Seattle Connection.
I
right?
listened to that so many times. I loved that thing. The very last song that had all the sound effects, bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the kind of stuff he's talking about here.
But again, we're talking about this is the pivotal point.
Yeah.
And this is the one that kind of brought it out there. Because, yeah, if you're a record executive, who'd they sign for? I can't remember.
Was it Columbia?
Yeah.
Yeah, Columbia.
I mean, if you're a Columbia record exec, you're going, okay, we're going to put you on tour with
Extreme.
Yeah. And they're Extreme. That album was huge.
It was huge. I mean, dude, More Than Words. Has there ever been a bigger song, like ever? That thing was being played constantly. It's unbelievable how successful that was.
Yeah. Also, really cool back. I mean,
oh, this?
Yeah.
I mean, they put that plastic over the water, and then they had to go up and suck in, and it gets that. I mean, I loved this picture. But interestingly, that picture kind of captures it.
Yeah, they're about to break out.
Yeah, and also drown. It has the feeling of drowning.
Yeah.
And they're pushing their way through this. I mean, it's so crazy. And it feels, whatever this music feels like, to me, that's kind of it.
It's captured in the image.
Yeah, I love that picture so much.
Really,
and it is
really
truly,
good.
To your point, there is some symbolism there about what was about to happen in the real world with these guys. Anyway, I loved, when I bought this album for us to talk about, just because, you were a fan, I'm a fan. We just talk about them all the time. We were totally into this stuff. And then I thought, before we actually dig into the tracks, because I went and played this today. I was putting it on the turntable, listening to it, and I thought, you know what? Before we start digging into the tracks, we need to talk about that time period. Because there was a timestamp going on in this moment. And you put all those bands together and realize all this stuff's happening around them, and there's Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff. And they're about to walk in and just clobber the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, you think about when we did the Monsters of Rock video.
Yeah.
We were talking about, the bands that were there. Kingdom Come, Dokken, Van Halen, obviously, right? Scorpions.
Yeah, it's interesting because both Metallica and Megadeth during that period, they were bubbling under the surface.
Right.
And because they were building up that fan base of people that kind of weren't into any of that 80s stuff to begin with.
Right. I think that heavier, angrier, misunderstood type sound, feelings, emotions, and not everybody can be, rock and roll all night, party every day, I'm happy and we're going to party and have a great time. I mean, at some point, party's over. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beginning right here, is you have these, like you said, these seeds of heavier music, the Slayers, the Anthrax, all these heavier bands that had been there, but none of them were getting like the Slaughter, Bon Jovi type of airplay. Right. It was like this underbelly of awesome, heavier music, which we enjoy. And then it kind of led to this. Because to me, when I first listened to this, I was thinking, oh, this is more heavy metal, right? But then they're not Pantera that was coming out, or White Zombie that was coming out. They're more like heavy rock. Like, it's just, this is even darker.
And heavy,
slower.
Fast. Like you start talking about Megadeth and Metallica, like ripping machine gun,
slower.
And then these guys come and go
like a tank.
Okay, this is a tank. We are plodding, boom, boom, and it had that Black Sabbath thing. And really, what it comes down to, so often with these things in the world of music, is it's a pendulum.
Yeah,
the pendulum gets so far in one direction that everybody just kind of goes, you know what?
And we've talked about the copycat type of thing. I mean, what didn't come out, or what had already come out, was the other kind of like little shift where you had the Guns N' Roses and the LA Guns,
they were
Faster Pussycat, and that whole LA scene that was kind of in its own little world, because they weren't necessarily the same as the Tricksters and the Firehouse and the Poisons of the world. You had these like sub rock genres kind of starting to splinter off. Because Guns N' Roses continued to kind of put stuff out. Use Your Illusion and all that came out, but nothing like this.
No. Yeah, this was...
And even, you're right. Man in the Box was on TV. Just kind of looking at that. That was on a lot. And I remember it was great.
And it just boom, and he had the wah pedal. Ow. I mean,
Yeah, it
dude.
was like the voice box, almost like Bond. You know, what was that? Richie Sambora.
Oh, it had a similar thing.
Yeah,
it
it
had,
was
but it had that
something like
wah,
that.
and then
Peter
and then he
Frampton.
was singing along with it.
Yeah.
That, oh my gosh! And then
Really good stuff.
Then when you hear what really got me with some of this stuff too was we were coming off of Guitar Hero World, where we had who can play faster, and
totally.
lightning speed. And who can cram as many notes as possible in the same.
This is in the opposite direction.
Then all of a sudden it's like reverse, and then we get the grindiest, crunchiest guitar tones, and then his solos. I mean, it was nothing like that. It was this brutal power, and the guitar solo. It had space. It was powerful. It was raunchy. It was imperfect. And because of that, it was like what electric guitar in some ways should sound like.
Yeah, it was like
Because
cool.
it was just this
I
brutal,
get it. It's-
noisy, amazing sound. Oh my
mean-
gosh, I loved it.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, here we just a couple weeks ago talked about George Lynch, Dokken. We had Yngwie taking his super vitamins. If you haven't seen that, talking about pick speed and what pick you should do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're going from that was going on to this. It's totally two different speeds.
Yeah.
And totally two different energy and totally two different vibes. You know, energies. You know, it was just a whole different thing.
And the beauty of it is, today, I can look back on all this stuff and I just love all of it.
It's all good.
You know, at the time I was kind of moving off into this world, but today I'm like, you know what? I love Rat.
Yeah.
I think I've said that before. And all of a sudden you're like, there was so much great stuff happening, and all of it was kind of responding to each other, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, if you didn't evolve, and then you had a lot of bands that were trying to, you know, do heavier sounds to kind of blend in.
Didn't work.
Didn't work because it was ingenuine, unauthentic.
Yeah.
These guys, like Layne was saying in the interview, hey, you know, this is partly kind of, you can't replicate where we're from and the influences that we have to write this kind of material. Just like Black Sabbath, right? We're talking about the industrial sound. We want it to sound like a machine.
Yeah.
You know, okay. It makes sense. You're not coming out of sunny Southern California and being like, whoo, I'm so sad. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't work.
I know that Paul Stanley, I remember he was in some interview because Gene was trying to push him into this.
Yeah, I
and
mean, if you
Paul's
think
like,
about
"Are you kidding me?"
Revenge or the album I was thinking about earlier, you know, Carnival of Souls, you know, definitely heavier, darker, but
But Paul's
not the
like,
same.
you know, we're rich, we have perfect lives. What are we going to do? We're going to write about how horrible our lives are. That was his. I saw him in an interview talking about that. I thought that's pretty funny.
Well, it's a great pivotal moment, and I do believe this is definitely that.
Yeah, it doesn't often get the credit because we do look at that that moment when we all heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I've got a whole story about my own where I heard that song for the first time, but this was like, here we go.
Yep.
And people like seeing this, I was like, this is so great.
Well, this guy
listening to this
Peter
person, Peter
Atkinson?
Atkinson,
Yeah.
kind of saw what was going on and was
He had a lot of foresight.
Yeah.
Good job, Peter.
pretty awesome. So anyway, hey, if you're not following the channel already, please follow the channel. Love to get your feedback on this video, on your thoughts about this record, about the time period, what you remember from these moments as these things changed, and what was going on with you. We all lived through this. What was your experience like? There were some people I know that watched the channel that hated this stuff, that never really got into it, and there's other people that kind of that had that same moment. You're like, dude, I love this so much.
Yeah.
And so, everybody had their own experience. We want to hear yours.
What kind of camp were you in?
Yeah.
Because you were either, you know, following, you know, Guns N' Roses or that kind of scene, or were you still kind of, hey, Slaughter and all this and Poison, Flesh and Blood, you know, or all of a sudden this was like so fresh and new that you were like, I'm in this.
Yeah.
This is a new direction. I'm going to, you know, for me, I was definitely more into the darker stuff. You know, I like it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Big time. So anyway, hey, like the video, follow the channel. Leave your feedback.
Yeah.
Appreciate all of it. And
Thanks, everybody.
Have yourself a fantastic day.